Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My dear brothers and sisters, I pray for light and peace in your lives and for your families as well. This video is going to be an opportunity for us to take a dive into two key concepts in Islam: trust and stewardship, Amana and Khalifah. So what is this journey going to look like, and what do these two ethical principles mean? We're going to look at how we have been given this important responsibility of being caretakers, stewards of this world. We will ask, while we are here, how can we keep this trust given to us by Allah to take actions to make and leave this world a better place? Nonetheless, we're only here for a short time. So we can also try to ask and answer questions such as, how do we leave a worthy legacy in this regard, by perhaps taking a more long-term perspective? How do we help those who will inherit the world from us? Help them have a better hope for the future? How do we take actions that are going to make a long-lasting difference? So to do this, we need to try and better understand these concepts, trust and stewardship, starting by their use in the Quran, and then specifically how they're related to caring for our environment and with this pressing issue of climate change. We're going to try to do this by taking some examples from the AKDN projects, and finally looking at some personal actions, such as what we can do at home, how we can get involved with volunteering and charities, and lastly, how we can leave a positive legacy to these charities. Let's start by trying to think of an act or charity or generosity, something that's inspired you, perhaps restored your faith in humanity, or even moved you to help someone. What was it that characterized this act of charity? What made it hit home for you? For me, acts of charity that touch my heart, touch our hearts, are often the ones that stem from a place of selflessness and this genuine care and concern for others. They lack those egotistical motives and are done despite much sacrifice and for reasons greater than material, superficial gains. One of my favorite acts of generosity and selflessness, this giving, comes from the Holy Quran. The story is described in Surah Al-Insan, ayat 7-9. They perform their vows, and they fear a day whose evil will be widespread, and they feed for the love of Allah the poor, the orphan, and the captive, saying, "We feed you for the sake of Allah alone. No reward do we desire from you, nor thanks." These may sound like regular acts of charity until you hear the story behind them. One day, Prophet Muhammad's grandchildren, Hazrat Hassan and Maulana Hussein, peace be upon them all, who were very young children at the time, fell very ill. The Prophet advised their concerned parents, Maulana Ali and Bibi Fatima, peace be upon them, to make a vow that if Hassan and Hussein recovered, they would fast for 3 days. And by the grace of Allah, Hassan and Hussein indeed did recover, so the family began to fast. And I believe what ensued are events that display the utmost level of generosity. The family fasted their first day, and as they were about to break their fast, on that small amount of bread they had, there was a knock on the door. It was a destitute man who said, "O household of the Prophet, I am a poor Muslim and I am hungry. Will you give me food?" Without hesitation, the family gave up the little they had to the needy man and slept that night, having only water to break their fast. As they were about to break their fast on day 2, again they heard a knock on the door. It was an orphan standing outside their door begging for food. And just like the night before, the family gave up their bread and broke their fast on water alone. On the third and final day of fasting, again someone knocked on their door. It was a recently released non-Muslim prisoner who, just like those before him, pleaded for food. Once again, the family gave up all that they had. By the end of the 3 days, the family was extremely drained and physically exhausted, but had nonetheless fulfilled their vow to Allah. Each day they gave while disregarding their own hunger and desire for food. And it begs the question, why did they do this? What kept them so motivated, determined, and generous? The response, we feed you for the sake of Allah alone. No reward do we desire from you, nor thanks. That leaves no doubt about the family's motivations. They had given all of their food out of love for Allah and fear for a day when they will be asked what they did when someone begged at their door for help. They made no excuses, they rejected no one. They didn't think about their own worldly nourishment, but just about helping the destitute in their community. It's recorded that Imam Hussein said in his adult years, "The most generous of the people is the person who gives to those from whom he has no hope of return." No hope of return. The household of the Prophet saw people in need of compassion and mercy. Indeed, this family, through their actions, manifested the mercy of Allah towards His creation. And this really is the Islamic principle, the ethical principle of putting faith into action. It relates to our actions in this life and making the world a better place through kindness, generosity, compassion, love. Imam Ali is reported to have said, "Let your compassion come to the rescue, just as much as you expect God to show you mercy and forgiveness." Next, let's consider the concept of Khalifah, which is used several times in the Quran with a reference to our higher purpose in life. In Surah Al-Baqarah it says, "Behold, thy Lord said to the angels, I will create a Khalifah, steward or custodian on earth." And in Surah Al-An'am, "It is He who has placed you as Khalifah, stewards, successors on earth." So in this context, Khalifah can be translated as successor, inheritor, steward, or even guardian. And let's bring this to the present moment. What does our Imam teach us about stewardship and of trust? What can we take from his example? Maulana Hazrat Imam said in an interview in 2015, "Islam says that we as Muslims have to leave the environment in a better condition than we found it when we were born. In other words, Allah has entrusted to the human race the duty to improve, to work with His creation. And that's why the Aga Khan Trust for Culture is called a trust. And that's how the ethic of the faith comes into the way you work." He is saying that this trust is all of our responsibilities towards the rest of humanity, our environment, and even ourselves. And today I'd like us to focus on one of the biggest challenges in this regard, climate change. Of course, we could talk about poverty elimination, education, pluralism, even rebuilding homes after war, but we don't have time for everything today. So please, let's just consider our environment, something that covers everybody. It affects us and our world at all levels. And let's remember that the Jamaat living in developing countries where the AKDN operates, it generally lives in 3 geographic zones: mountains, plains, and coasts. Unfortunately, these are some of the areas most likely to be affected by climate change, and people in developing countries are the least able to prevent it and protect themselves from these effects. I'd like us to watch together a couple of videos highlighting some of the work from the different AKDN agencies. The first video is dedicated to Kenya's first solar-powered safari lodge, the Kilaguni Serena Safari Lodge in Tsavo West National Park. The film explores the hotel chain's efforts to construct its properties in a more environmentally friendly manner, showing how good stewardship of the earth is actually an integral part of the ethical framework of the AKDN. The second video, Housing for All, A Better Urban Future, asks, can all homes be safe and comfortable? Do they all have running water and electricity? Are there green spaces nearby for our children to play, hospitals or schools? We see how the Aga Khan Agency for Habitat, AKA, works to ensure that people live in a safe, sustainable and resilient physical setting, providing them with opportunities to thrive. course, this is just the tip of the iceberg. For more videos, please see the AKDN YouTube page or the.ismaili. Let's bring this closer to home with a call to action to ourselves. I want to do this because the AKDN projects can seem big and distant to us. And we can, of course, contribute financially to different charities and to support big projects. But it can be difficult for us to see how to make an impact in our everyday lives and see how these develop in an ongoing way. And that means that we can take more local and individual commitments. And these can be critical to how we can make our world a better place and then provide the future we want to leave for our inheritors, our future generations. So to finish, let's look at 3 areas in which we can all take action to make a difference. First, in our everyday personal lives, as the lockdown restrictions are lifted and we go back to living the same way as before, or do we make a change? What can our Jamaat start doing today? I think the critical aspect, which covers so many things, is to keep in mind the 5 R's principle: refuse, reuse, reduce, recycle, and rot. We all live off this earth. Let's try to do it with balance. If we each try to live more simple lives with less excess, that will make an immediate difference to our individual impact on the climate. Next, consider how we can support or volunteer working with different charities, perhaps, to make a difference. This can be through the Jamaat, through Ismaili Civic, or with other charities working to address other causes that can be close to our hearts. Taking Ismaili Civic as an example, it has numerous projects around the globe where we can get involved and that can really make a difference locally, particularly as we're coming out of the COVID pandemic. And I really think that there's something for everyone. This idea of service and charity, which we hear so often, these are opportunities for us to share our blessings with others, especially those not as fortunate as ourselves. As stewards made from one single soul, our love and our compassion must extend beyond our individual selves. Lastly, let's consider leaving a legacy, perhaps in a will, that can allow charities to make a significant long-term impact. Of course, providing for our family and our dependents is our top priority as we pass on. But leaving a legacy is something that we can use that which is in excess, a good way of making lasting change. The charity closest to my heart is AKF, and you can see the link in the slide and in the description. Whatever you choose to do, hopefully many of these things, but let's make a commitment to bringing hope to those in need. Let us come together to support our institutions as they work towards improving the quality of life of the Jamaat and others in societies in which we live. Thank you for watching this talk. I would like to leave with a final prayer for the potential for hope in these times of uncertainty. I pray that with the guidance and support of our Imam, we can hope to work together, to act together, to leave the world a better place than when we were born into it. Ameen, and thank you.